Hey guys, welcome
Hello.
to OCD Real Talk. Sam and I have just had like a 15-minute kind of like situation of trying to figure out the camera work and the recording for this video. So yeah, we've been talking for a hot second right now. But so Sam, actually, interestingly enough, just yesterday I did a real talk with Gemma, and we were talking about the question like, do you guys still work on recovery? Right? And I think the topic that you also want to bring up today as well is like somewhat similar in a way, which is
Hmm.
that how life looks like post recovery. But I think there are different nuances that we can definitely touch upon
Yeah.
uh, in both these. So, right. So, I mean, like, I'll start it off with how I also started off like the real talk with Gemma as well. So, if someone asked you that question, like, "Hey Sam, so like, how does life look like after recovery? How is it different from your life before?" So, what would you exactly say?
Yeah. And I often answer that by saying, when you're waking up in the morning, you're not just diving into an OCD battle, right? So when I was stuck, I would wake up and, like I've said many times, I had about 5 seconds of relief and then boom, it was there. Now, being recovered, you wake up and you are focused on what you have planned in the day, right? You're more plugged into that life or whatever schedule you've got. You're more energized. You're looking forward to more things, okay? And that's the main difference. But of course, you've got the absence of the guilt and the shame and the anxiety and the intrusive thoughts have come down, so there's no intrusiveness, right? But the myth is that you're in this blissful state, that you just wake up and then it's just constant happiness dancing down the street. We've covered that many times. That isn't the case. That is a lie. That is not true at all. Okay, if anything, you actually have more problems when you're recovered because you're doing more things, right?
Yeah,
You're doing way more things. You have more external
that's
problems,
actually a really good way of looking at it. Yeah.
more things potentially going wrong because you're leaving the comfort zone a lot more, aren't you? If you're traveling more, if you're taking more risks, if you're maybe going for a job promotion, maybe you're dating more, all these things that you avoided when
Yeah.
being stuck, that is going to cause more problems. However, doesn't mean then you just can't deal with them because you faced OCD, right? You faced OCD, so
Yeah.
you have a more robust mindset, a robust sort of outlook on problems, and you get better at overcoming problems. And that's the biggest
And
thing
I
for me,
think
Momin,
the
just how to deal with life problems. That's what's really helped with me.
No, absolutely. And I think like a good way of also looking at it is that, I mean, recovery is basically the absence of suffering, and then it leads you back into a life that is essentially of a normal person in society. So
Mm.
if you look at a normal average person in society, is their life blissful or completely happy? No.
Yeah.
So just because you're recovered from OCD, like why would you be in a constant state of
Yeah.
bliss and positivity? You've resumed like regular life like normal people have, but then that also means that, like you just said, that also means that comes with challenges and problems that regular people also have. Again,
Yeah.
paying the bills, working on relationships,
Mm.
keeping a stable job and income, uh,
Life carries on.
bills. Yeah, like life goes on, traveling and whatnot. Kids. Someone who, let's say, right now is holding back on, let's say, having kids with their partner, right? Because of OCD, because they're afraid of, what it would mean, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, let's say they recover and they have a kid, that's absolute chaos as well, because kids are not easy. Like, it's going to be a bit of a mess.
Yeah. And yeah, it's quite a freeing and liberating experience when you think about it, because that doesn't mean then, like I say, it's not that blissful state again. But when you've been under the shackles of OCD, you're not having to do avoidance compulsions, right? When you're not having to internally check things or externally check things, right? When you're not in that internal battle in your head chasing certainty, that feels freeing. That's what feels liberating because it does feel freedom. Like I'll go out and go for a walk, for example, and now I can easily take it for granted. So I have to work on gratitude even now, right? Not an OCD sense, but I have to remember that, hey, I was once stuck with this because you get used, your body adapts, your brain adapts to things. But now I'm thinking, how great is it that I'm not walking through having a lovely walk with my dog in the trees or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm not having to work something out 5 years ago, right? I'm not just consumed by guilt and shame. So that is a freeing experience. And that was, for me, my motivator to get better because what I found on the journey was I had glimpses, right? I was almost teased many times with false dawns, which is what we cover a lot, where you feel like, hey, you're getting somewhere, and then you have a setback. But what tends to used to happen, I'd have a setback, and as I let the time pass and sort of, okay, let it take as long as it's going to take, after that, I felt more free because it was like
Yeah.
because you've then suffered again, right? Because you've been in the trenches again with OCD, and it's been sort of at the forefront, very severe symptoms. As you start coming out of that, you think, "Wow, this is amazing." So you go, "Oh, I'll do as much as I can." The skill is living life as if you were recovered, right?
Yeah.
Because I hear it all the time, and I'm sure Mum can relate to this. I'll do that when I'm recovered, right? That's the trap. You'll be saying that your whole life, I'm afraid. You have to live life as if you were recovered today. You can't, obviously, you can't fool yourself. You can't kid yourself. You know you're
Yeah.
not recovered because of how you're feeling. I know that. But if anything that you're putting off, like Momin's example, then having kids, maybe you really want to go for a job promotion and you're putting it off because, oh, this is too much. What if I get overwhelmed, right? You won't recover with that kind of attitude because then you're sat around waiting for it. Okay. But recovery is when you're not then thinking, oh shit, what if it all comes back? Because your relationship has changed with the
Yeah.
suffering. You're not scared of the anxiety coming back. And then Mum has told it really well. You're not scared of a setback. You could have a setback, but you're not scared of it. That's the big difference.
And also, I think like I mean, this is how at least it has gone on for me, which is like for example, I've just moved to Dubai, right? And in moving here, I'm not going into it like with this, oh, I like the little product placement of the OCD mug. Um, but I need to get that. I don't have that. Okay, cool.
I'm kitted out in all the merchandise here. OCD
I
jumper, OCD
well,
mug.
actually,
I get
I
OCD on
just
that.
ordered. I think so. We should get it tattooed over here. But so I've just moved to Dubai, right? And so in approaching this move to Dubai, it wasn't like, oh, now I have to go into it and I have to accept the problems and I have to like I that's not even like an evaluatory framework for me anymore. It's just like it's not that, oh, is this new thing in my life, is it going to give me problems or is it going to give me advantages? It's like, okay, this is something I want to do and it's a big thing, let's do it. And then as I go along day to day, then I figure out all the problems and complications that come with it, right? Obviously, if you're moving to another country, there's going to be a lot of like logistical issues and problems and unseen kind of like problems as well,
Yeah.
unseen expenses, in fact, that come in when you're moving to a new place. So,
Mm.
but those are things that I think, navigated in a very take it one day at a time kind of thing, because there was no way for me to know some of the problems I had on week one. I had no idea in week 10, these are the problems I would have.
Exactly. And
So those
and
are things that I've had to weed out.
and doesn't that show, Mom? And that's from your journey. That's from your OCD recovery journey.
Oh,
When you were in
100%.
the pits of hell and you were taking it one day at a time, that stemmed from that. So you're still using that tool of one day at a time, but in a more exciting way, right? Moving to a
And
different country.
I'll tell you something interesting. So, this is like when I was still really bad with OCD. At the time, I was thinking of going for my higher education to for I was thinking of going for my higher education to Canada, right? And in my mind, I thought, okay, if I'm going there, what I will do is I was already planning. I was like, I'm not going to take these clothes and these shoes and these things because they're contaminated. So I want to make sure that when I move there, I don't want to take any like big triggers with me to this new place. I'm going to leave that all behind and start my life literally on a clean slate kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was already planning on how to, even the shoes that I'll wear from home that I'll carry over there into whatever, accommodation and stuff I had in my mind. I was already thinking that this is how I'll go about cleaning the bottom of my shoes so that I don't feel like I've taken that contamination into my new accommodation, this and
Wow.
that. So it
Planning
was
ahead
like a
compulsively.
planning ahead compulsively, and it was this kind of like yeah, I mean, I wasn't looking at it just from an angle of, oh, I'm just going from education and it'll be exciting. It was more from an angle of how do I make sure that OCD does not like bother
Yeah.
me over there kind of thing. And it
Yeah.
was It was a lot of stress.
All yeah, yeah, all that trying to that's safety, isn't it? Trying to make sure it all goes to plan, and trying to sort of solve things now to make sure you don't have make sure OCD is okay. Then yes, very very subtle
It's
compulsions.
also, I think, that mindset that a lot of us also have, kind of, which is like, let me just leave OCD behind and just get on with my life. And I think even with recovery as well, I was speaking to Gemma about this as well. With recovery as well, I think there's an approach that people have, which I think is quite misguided, which is that if I work on recovery, then I don't have to look back and think about OCD ever again. And it can just be like,
Yeah,
gone in the past. Like, that's very black and white thinking, which is not to
yeah,
say that it has to be the forefront of your life. It's not the forefront of my life or your. Well, I mean, we work with OCD sufferers on a daily basis, so in that way, it's at the forefront. But in our personal lives, it's not like at the forefront at
hmm,
all. And I don't feel the need that, I just have to box it up and leave it behind. Like, no, I
yeah.
don't feel that kind of. I need to outrun it in any way.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about two things that I've really, really noticed from like what's come from recovery, right? So the first thing is being engaged with conversations, right? I'm sure Momin can really relate to that. I spoke to Elliot this morning. We did a real tip this morning, and we covered that as well because what you notice is when you've been living for so long with that sort of thousand-yard stare, right? That distant look, or that vacant look, where you're sort of looking through people, where you're not really there. You're obviously physically there, but you're not there mentally. Now, one of the biggest things that I've noticed today and ever since I've been recovered is that I get more engaged in conversations, so I can have deeper conversations. It's not literally just ticking a box conversation. Listen, right? Not having to jump in as some kind of like escape. Like what I used to do, like if I was feeling maybe anxious, I'd sort of be frantically keeping the conversation going or just not talking at all. So it was like no in the middle, frantically
And
keeping the
also, I
conversation
think
going because I was anxious.
conversations or conversations or catch-ups with friends also, at least to me,
Yeah,
felt like a task that had to be done and checked off the list kind
exactly.
of thing. So
Exactly.
it was more like, okay, I have to do this rather
Yeah.
than, oh, I genuinely feel like sitting down and doing it.
Yeah. And how freeing is that? How refreshing is that that you can have a conversation with people that you've never met before, and just talk about things that aren't just sort of surface level conversations. That's what I love, right? I like talking philosophy. I'm sure Mom and does. I know Rob certainly does. I know
Oh
Nick
yeah,
does. It's not like it's all I talk about, but it's just nice not having to say, oh, I can't speak about that because I might get triggered, or I can't do that because of
yeah.
this. It's just nice to feel that freeing feeling where you can just discuss things. You don't have to jump in. You can really sit and think about things, right?
And
And not having
this
OCD
happened.
call the shots to your life all the time.
This happened the other day. So they were like over the last few weeks, there had been like a few people I had to, I still had to speak to, and I had to catch up with, like, I had to catch up with my family, and then a couple of friends that I hadn't really spoken to and whatnot. And this happened extremely organically. Like it wasn't even planned. Um, I was done with my one-to-ones for the day, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to have like a chill night now, and just like, ease down and everything. And I ran into a friend and I was like, "Oh, how have you been doing?" And turns out she was also free. And then we ended up having like an hour long sit down and just like a long conversation. And it turned out to be like a conversation about life and things as well. Then, as I was about to, I was just like heading out of that conversation. Just about, 45 minutes later, I stumbled upon another friend. And she was like, "Hey, where you going? Like, I really wanted to talk to you. Let's like catch up." I caught up with that. When I went to my room, a family friend who I'd been meaning to speak to for a while, she called me and she was like, "Oh, we haven't spoken, like,
Wow.
and we've been me." And so it just happened like literally like on a go. And
Yeah.
I was also amazed by the end of the day. I was like, wait, like I had a lot of energy to talk today.
Yeah.
Even after my one-to-ones, I still caught up with all my friends. And I felt very fulfilled that day as well, that I was able to do it without it feeling like, oh, I have to talk to this person as
Yeah.
well and, check something off my list.
Yeah, that's that energized feeling again. It's plugged in, isn't it? You're not sort of completely exhausted after just getting through the day.
Yeah.
You know, when you're stuck, it's just the task is just to get through the day, isn't it? It's just how do I get through to the evening? I remember thinking that many, many times. How do I keep my head above water? How do I stop myself from drowning today? Right? But there's none of that. when you recover, there's none of that. It's like I said with the analogy of getting up in the morning, you're thinking of what you got planned, and you almost can't wait for that. You're like, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this. Obviously, you've got things you don't want to do. Every human being has that, right? That's just all part of chores and so on. But you're actually looking forward to it. There's no dread, there's no apprehension, right? I spent years
Yeah.
just in dreading things. Oh, not necessarily what I was doing, but it was like how I was going to feel as I was doing it. Even like a holiday, right? I dread a holiday just because how shit I was going to feel on holiday.
Yeah.
So obviously, I liked the holiday, but I just felt so shit. So, and there's none of that now. And I can't wait to
So,
go on holiday, for example.
Sam, like, I mean, tell me this, like, because I don't know if I've particularly, because I mean, I don't watch every single video on the YouTube channel, I'll be
How
honest.
dare you? You don't watch
Like,
my videos.
I'm already like, I don't need to be binge watching our channel. Anyway, so, uh, but I don't know if you've spoken about this in any of your videos, but how much of exhaustion and fatigue
Wow.
was a part of your like suffering?
Massive. Yeah, I did a video about 3 weeks ago now on demotivation and procrastination, or
Right, yeah,
LinkedIn, putting things off. I can't do that until I feel like this. Mainly just with recovery at the moment. If I had to do an exposure or just, and also structure as well, focusing on structure, like getting out of bed earlier, exercising more, my frustration tolerance was so low. And whenever I thought of building my frustration tolerance, it was just, you can't do that. So I got jammed every time.
yeah,
There was a block there every time. Like, nope, you just don't have the energy. Right. And how often
yeah.
do you hear us say, you're not going to have the energy. You're not going to feel motivated. I don't know anybody that comes in other than when they first come off the call and then feel motivated. Because all it takes is you get triggered again and then the motivation's gone. So you might have the
Mhm.
temporary motivation, but it never really lasts, is it? Because OCD is so intense. So yes, that was a big one with me. Just sort of how do I build my life? How do I get my structure in place? I think about it. I'd be keen to do it, and never really followed through with it because I was just zapped of all energy.
This is the other interesting thing about motivation as well. So, I mean, I was the king of demotivation essentially and procrastination, and I would, put things off uh, chronically, I would say. And but when I did have, because I would have these bursts of motivation that would be like really intense
Yeah,
motivation of like, I'm going to do like everything kind of feeling. And it was it was interesting because even with that burst of motivation, I was most of the time not able to do anything. Why? Because the prospect of the endless possibilities that I could do with that motivation and that few hours of like absolute belief in myself that I felt, it was so overpowering and so overwhelming that I ended up being paralyzed by, okay, so how do I utilize this now? And
yeah,
so I would end up, and also the uncertainty of like, okay, now I'm getting this like, I know I can do XYZ thing, but okay, if I do this, then what comes after that? So there was, even though it was like a positive thing in terms of the changes I was thinking of making or the, things I wanted to work on, even in the positivity, there was so much uncertainty that would overwhelm me of what
yeah.
would come as a result of that positive change.
It's because
And therefore, I would not do
you
anything.
got so used to being demotivated, didn't you? You got so used
Oh,
to older
100%.
lazy bad habits. And I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about. I said two things. That I talked about sort of the engagement in conversation, but the biggest thing, and anyone that's followed my journey knows that I've dealt with guilt and shame significantly. My whole real event, false memory, POCD, harm OCD, anything that you could feel guilty over, OCD was targeting. Many, not just those themes, but many different ones. Because it was always like after the guilt angle. Now, the biggest thing I noticed today, even if I make a mistake, when you're recovered, you still make mistakes, right? Momin is fallible. I am fallible. We are imperfect. We still fuck up, right? But the biggest thing is this, it's how you react to mistakes, right? There is no, and I've had to work so hard at this, and this fueled my recovery. I had to work that even if I have done something wrong, done something bad, broken the law, done something immoral, made a mistake, whatever it may be, how I don't rate myself. That's taken a while, that philosophy. And I had to really work on that because relevant false memory OCD. So it was very severe. I was writing
Yeah.
myself off immediately. So now it's like an automatic reaction. There is no writing myself off. I have to watch it, yeah, because I've been so used to doing that for so long. But it doesn't happen now. Even if it's just seconds, I can tell the rational thinking is there. It's like, well, even if you do write yourself off, what's that going to solve today? So I've trained myself, and with the philosophy that I've got, and that I now embody, is that no matter what I've done, I'm always looking to move on from that thing. There is no, you terrible person, you're undeserving, you can't do this now. There's none of that. And I lived a life like that. So that is the biggest thing that I've noticed. I'm trying to think of a recent mistake that I've made. I can't think of any now, but there'd be lots because I'm a human being. I make mistakes, but there's no
Proposing to
dwelling.
your girlfriend.
There's no dwelling on that. There's
Yeah.
no replaying it. There's no, oh,
Yeah.
what could have been if only this thing hadn't happened. Oh, what should
That's a
have
really
been.
good point as
There's
well,
none of
because
that.
I mean, when you're not hyper aware and being like over vigilant of like, am I making a mistake or not? Like, if I have to think right now, what's the last mistake I made? I would really have to think about it because
Exactly.
I
And
probably
I'm the
made a
same.
mistake and maybe I thought about it in the moment that, oh, I
Exactly.
shouldn't have done this and I can change this. But your brain also doesn't even really keep it in the memory bank that much because
Yeah.
it's just like, tossed
And
out in that way.
isn't that crazy that we're saying we can't remember our last mistake? And this is from somebody that literally ruminated over mistakes 24/7 in their
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
So that shows the difference, right? And the biggest thing is guilt and shame. Where would that get me? I just don't see the purpose of guilt and shame anymore. Like, even if I've done a
yeah,
terrible crime, I just wouldn't see the point of it because nothing, and I've had to train myself to think like this, nothing warrants chronic guilt and shame. I'm not a
yeah.
robot. I can have healthy regret. I can have healthy remorse. I can have frustration over things that I've made a mistake over. But I don't see the purpose of beating myself up endlessly and just
Yeah.
berating myself and then ultimately restricting my life from that constant beating myself up. I don't see the point in that. I'm always looking through the lens of compassion, not only at myself, but also others as well. Like if somebody else
Mm,
makes a mistake, I'm the first one with the compassion, right? It's not a grievance. It's not just saying, oh, it's fine, do what you want.
yeah.
No, but you're looking at it from the lens of understanding because I've had to apply that to myself. And that's such a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like in some ways I was the sort of person it was very easy for someone to make me feel guilty.
Yeah.
Like someone could just say that, oh, you've done this. And I just
Mm.
feel like the worst person, like, oh my God, like I've hurt someone or done something bad. It
Yeah.
was very easy for me to feel guilty. And I mean, honestly, it felt so like deep rooted in me as a person.
Yeah.
I just never thought I could ever be in a position where I would not feel guilty ever,
Yeah. I'm
and
exactly the
where I
same.
would not be so emotionally
Yeah.
sensitive to any kind of like, guilt and shame kind of response. So it honestly, like, if you take me back 6, 7 years and be like, hey, Moment, you're going to be a person who is not going to be feeling so bad about yourself all the time. Uh, I mean, I wouldn't believe you. I really
Yeah.
wouldn't believe you. It's
Exactly the
so
same.
like it's a shock to my
Yeah.
younger
I,
self that I can be in a position.
Totally relatable. Totally relatable. I wouldn't be able to have imagined my life without guilt and shame. Probably from the ages of 14, 15, there was guilt and shame. It got chronic and severe from the ages of about 18 when OCD kicked in. But it was always there, like from a young age, like looking for mistakes in the past and so on. Even like when I was at school, looking for mistakes then. So the
Yeah.
guilt and shame was always there. So if you said, "Hey Sam, by the time you're 24, there is zero guilt and shame," I'd have laughed in your face. I'd have said, "You're having a laugh. That's just not possible." Because that was my
Yeah.
way of thinking. I was just used to having my life filtered through guilt and shame. Right? I was behind the guilt and shame wall every time. Every time I did something, undeserving. No, you don't deserve that. Right? So that is the biggest thing. And
It
also,
felt like it was the cornerstone of your personality. It
yeah,
was literally a cornerstone,
I
and
didn't
it
know
was
any other
something that
way.
had to be there. It
Yeah,
had to be there to make you feel like you are yourself
yeah,
in a very fucked up way.
yeah. Didn't know any other way. And another thing is the life entitlement, huge, right? You realize when you come out of this, when you recover, that life owes you nothing, right? You're not owed anything, right? Doesn't mean you just become pessimistic about life. No, you actually become the opposite. You become realistic, yes, but also optimistic as well. And you have skepticism, so you start
And
thinking for
very
yourself.
practical. I would say very practical because when you don't feel like life owes you anything, in fact, you become very practical about, okay, then what are the steps that I need to take in order to
Yeah,
get to where I want to go?
to make things
Then you
happen.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah,
realistic I think is the best
yeah,
way. Realistic and pragmatic, I think these are the best ways of
yeah,
putting it, because you're not then having this unrealistic, like sugar coated version of this is what life will be like.
yeah,
And neither is it like, oh, everything is doom and gloom. It's a very, like, again, moving to Dubai. It
yeah,
wasn't like, oh, I'm going to move and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. It was like, okay, I'm going to go. And these are like the benefits that are going to happen as I move. And I also know that these are probably some of the negatives that will have to come as well. These are
yeah,
the concerns that will happen.
yeah,
And I'm facing some of those cons as well. They're not strong cons, they're not big cons, but they are there.
yeah.
Um,
That's a
so
huge.
it's a learning process. And also like
Yeah,
I'm also not living my life with the vision of like oh, this is what it needs to be and this is what it's going to be. Like it's a very, again, step-by-step approach of like I would say I live my life month by month in a way. If you ask me, hey, Momin, what are your life plans in life, or where do you want to go in 5 years? I have no idea. Maybe
yeah,
it would be good for me to be able to make a little bit of a loose life plan of like this is what I want to be in 5 years, but I don't.
yeah.
That's just not how I think, and I'm okay with that. I'm more, and you can say like I'm more of a let's play it by ear and let's see where I am in a month, and
Yeah.
then I'll plan forward from there,
It,
kind of thing.
what you're saying is that you've just dropped the control. There's no inner control. It's spontaneity, right? Yes, you might have a
Yeah,
schedule, but then you like not knowing what's around the corner. And it's
yeah,
like, and that's the same with me. Oh, yes, I have a schedule, but I like not knowing. I have future plans, of course, but I like not knowing what I'm doing next week or next weekend because I like
yeah,
that randomness of life. That gives me excitement towards life. Now,
yes,
it's when big thing is when life doesn't go your way, because it won't, as we're talking about, life owes you nothing. So when just things happen that you don't like and it really feels like it's bad luck, you realize is that, well, hang on a minute, all I can do is what's in my control, right? That changed my life. It sounds simple, but it changed
yeah,
my life. Rather than blaming everything else, oh, if only this thing that happened, and then victimizing yourself, saying, oh, yeah, but it's so unfair because I had this. Well, no, all you've got is what's in front of you and what can you do about it today, right? That's all you can focus on. And that's how I go through life. I don't whine, I don't moan, I don't blame other things because I can't control things. It's learning to change the things that we can control and the things that we can't control, learning to accept, adapt, and move on. Right.
yeah.
And that changed my life.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you become more of a go-getter kind of thing, but also without,
Making things happen, not waiting for it to land on your
yeah,
lap.
exactly. And also not feeling like, okay, am I feeling comfortable doing this? Is there anxiety doing this? Is there fear doing this? Do I feel okay? Is this triggering something from the past? Do I have to do this? Like that internal
Yeah.
mechanism of
Yeah.
constantly checking of what it means, where it's coming from, why is it happening to me? Like that noise just like goes away. And I still very vividly remember how it
Yeah.
felt, which is why just describing it to you right now,
Yeah.
like I was able to picture myself in that position. And I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore because
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
not a pretty place to be.
And yeah, and it's hard because it sounds so simple, isn't it? It's like, well, it's done now. It's done now. You move on. But with OCD, it's not that simple. You can't just say it's done now, move on, because you need to look at the acceptance and the compassion and that so on, and how you let yourself off the hook. That's what's key. But if I make a
Yeah,
mistake now, I just think, well, there's nothing that I can do about it now. Nothing at all. Right? If I
yeah.
go in, let's say I go and get scammed out of all my money, right? It'll be a huge frustration, but and let's say it was my fault, let's say it was my mistake, then all I can
You
do is
entered your
move on.
details on a shady website.
All you can do is move on, right? There's no point
Yeah,
beating yourself up. You can have the frustration, you can learn from where you went wrong, right? Any kind of, let's say you got injured doing something that was a bit stupid, I don't know, you fell over or whatever. You can,
yeah.
what's the point of going if only the thing hadn't happened? It's happened, you got to deal with it, you move on, right? I
By the
spent
way,
fucking years, mom, and dwelling in the past, going
yeah.
over things. It got me nowhere.
No, absolutely. I nearly did get scammed, by the way, once
Did you?
because
I swear human
uh
beings nearly got scammed.
yeah, like someone called me and they were pretending to be from my bank essentially, and lo and behold, they were essentially trying to hack into my account by getting some details. And I would say like I mean that's happened before as well, but I mean it was quite obvious, and I feel like this was a bit more of a smarter scammer as well because they really like played it cool, kind of like stuff as well, and it was very believable. Um,
Yeah.
but thankfully, like my bank was good because they like literally intercepted that hack and whatever. So I could have been, lost my money
Yeah.
that I have saved up
And
after years of working.
yeah, and I think it's because it's been years of breaking down worst case scenario, you realize that it's all just an illusion anyway. All this fear is just a bluff, right? Because even if it
Yeah,
happened, and you notice this when you read about people that are living your worst case scenario, and it's actually the anticipation which is worse than the thing actually happening, right? And because I've worked on it so much, I always think, no matter what situation I'm in, if I'm homeless, if I'm in jail, if I, God forbid, lose a family member, if I get ill, I'd always be looking to rebuild and what is in my control, right?
yeah,
Like I just said then, looking at what you can do about it and then aim to do something about it. And if you can't, you're going to have to learn to accept it. Because if you don't, you are going to pay the price emotionally. There's no wonder you're going to feel depressed. No wonder you're going to feel suicidal, hopeless, where you feel like
yeah.
you just can't move on and you feel completely defeated. It all stems from beliefs. Beliefs are everything, aren't they? Perspective is everything. Everything that you do is filtered through your beliefs, and that is
Yeah.
crucial.
And I mean, I think a lot of people watching this video, I think it's very easy to feel like, oh, it's easy for them to say. And
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
it's easy for them to say that they feel this way, but they don't know how stuck I am. Like again, like if you've seen any of our videos or if you've read any of the posts that we've done for Instagram and whatnot, you would know that we were extremely stuck ourselves as well, like really badly stuck. And so it's very
it's
easy
hard to do it
to.
justice, isn't it, Moment? It's hard to do it justice,
Oh,
really.
it is hard to do with justice. Really, I think it would have to be a lot of method acting if
Yeah, it
we
would.
came on a real talk, like going through some of those things. So I think with people watching this, I can understand how impossible it feels, and especially when people are talking about how recovery feels, it can make you. It's sometimes instead of giving people hope, it can make them feel even more hopeless about themselves because how much they are
Right.
putting
Yeah.
themselves in contrast to the people that they're listening to. So I completely understand that feeling. But exactly what Sam said, and I think this is extremely crucial for anyone who listens to this. Everything that you experience in life, whether it's just a what if fear or whether it's a real life problem that has happened or is happening, everything is filtered through your beliefs. All your emotions and how intensely you feel them is filtered through your beliefs. And if you're really able to work on those, you can get to a position of being able to, again, talk about the same things that we're talking about, which is that, hey, this is what life looks like after recovery, and this is how I feel now, and this is how I go about my life. You can be in this position. It'll just take hard work, persistence, and patience
Yeah.
as well. From if you start actively, properly working on recovery right now and implementing like the right steps today,
Yeah.
it'll take perhaps 2 to 3 years for you to be in a position where you feel really solid about it. And that seems like a very long time right now, but
Yeah.
trust me, like once you really start taking even some of the initial steps, you're going to feel the momentum
Yeah.
and you're going to feel like it's taking you somewhere, and that will give you the acceleration that you need to kind of like go all the way.
Yeah. And it's knowing that recovery isn't for a select few. It hasn't been reserved for Moment.
Yeah,
It hasn't been reserved for Sam and Gemma and Rob and Nick. It hasn't been reserved for Elliot only. You've got to think that recovery comes from within, right? You recover yourself. Right? All of us here, coaches, we can advise you until the cows come home, but ultimately, it's what you do about it yourself, right? It's the input that
yeah,
you show. It's what you do. Okay. And yes, there's a time and patience element. I get frustrated saying that, but that's reality. It takes time and patience to overcome this. But it's knowing that it's what you do about it today and it's in your hands, right? Ultimately, it's in your hands. It's not like you've got to get a huge slice of luck to recover. There's luck required in anything, of course, like being able to, you know, have sessions. And I understand all that. But ultimately, if you're watching this video, there's not like you can't recover, right? Because look for all the free content on this channel, for example. Yes, I'd always recommend one-to-ones because then you have that personal guidance, of course.
yeah,
But the information is there. So it's not like, oh, I can't recover because I don't know this, I don't know that. right? It's what you do with it, it's the persistence with it, it's the
Yeah.
constant practice. But the main thing is that you're not the exception, right? I said all the time in my journey, and I hear it a lot in my coaching calls, is that yeah, but this one's different. Yeah, but mine's different to that one. I'm treatment resistant. And I go, okay, but when you think like that, then you're not going to recover. You might as well shut the door on recovery. Okay, even
Yeah.
when you feel treatment resistant, you can recover. It's down to you, it's down to your behaviors, and ultimately it's down to your beliefs, which can be changed. Okay, the door is never shut on changing your beliefs and your behaviors, and that's critical.
Yeah, no. And I think it's right now the year is coming to an end. Christmas is also coming up. I think a lot of people will be maybe even dreading Christmas quite a bit. They will also be thinking, oh shit, like another year of Christmas and I'm still not recovered. The year is coming to an end. I'm still stuck. All the things are going to happen. But I mean, people come in even in their 50s to work with us. I'm working with
Mm.
people, a few people right now who are in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
And people come later on. Some people are coming super young as well, in their late teens or early 20s as well. It's There's nothing as too soon or too late to work
yeah,
on recovery.
and
You
and
can
there's
have been stuck
also
for decades but still recover just the same.
yeah, and also, Mom, and it's knowing there's no shame in reaching out for help.
Oh yeah,
Right? Believe it or not,
100%.
that is a big barrier, the stigma,
Yeah.
especially if you're from a culture where, I don't know, it might be deemed as a bit of a weakness. For me personally, the culture that I'm in, like the football culture, and it's all quite sort of black and white thinking.
Yeah.
Mental health and anxiety is sort of like, have a pint of beer and get over it kind of thing. And it's not that simple, it's
Yeah.
obviously a deeper
Yeah.
level of understanding is required. So that can just be the first hurdle to overcome. And then once you're in the door, once you understand what's going on, and then it's down to you and the work you put in.
And some of your, like, I don't know, football bros, if they, like, for example, listen to this video, I mean, some of them might be inspired, but some of them might also be like, dude, you're thinking too much. Like, you don't need to be thinking this much about things. And that is the notion, that is the notion that people have about mental health, which is like, oh, it's basically, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever it is, it's people overthinking too much. If you just like turn down the overthinking, then life is very straightforward and simple. No, it's like it really isn't that way. And I think part of it, it's a very important point that you're also talking about in terms of shame as well, which is that, like, and I think from, I can't speak for how it feels amongst like a group of girls, but I think for like group of guys can feel this quite a lot, which is the pressure to be a certain way in terms of like a bro way, like not having any mental health weaknesses or emotional weaknesses kind of thing. And I think one person opening up about some of those things can just feel like a daunting task, because then
Yeah,
you're stepping out of the regular mold of the very kind of like masculine, at times even alpha kind of culture that people can be
yeah,
surrounded by. But you have to be willing to step outside of that and do things for yourself, because how much of it is a good idea to not work on things and keep that level of suffering so close to the chest?
yeah, yeah. And it's a really sad state of affairs when you think about that. That's very sad, isn't it? That you've got to view. I know this is super, super hard, but I've got people in, for example, they might be 18, 19, 20, and the first thing they tend to say
Hmm.
is, why do I have to go through this at the best years of my life? And I say, hey, you got to drop that attitude, because that isn't going to work. You can't be sort of saying, I'm 18, I shouldn't be dealing with OCD, because you've got OCD, so you've got to deal with it, right? But
Yeah.
also look at the opportunity, right? And I didn't see this for years. I didn't, because I was so caught up on the suffering, and I wasn't alone. I'm sure everyone has that, because when you're triggered all the time, you're not thinking about how this is an opportunity. You're thinking, oh, for God's sake, why am I always triggered? But when you take a step back and you start philosophizing a new way of thinking, you're going, hang on a minute, these tools are for life, right? So once I realized that I was learning rational thinking at 19 years old, I thought, wow, that's going to put me in a great position for life, right? I use everything that I've learned for OCD for life, which is what we've already covered. So
I
you've got to try and see it as that, rather than just, I'm doing this just to fix OCD and then I go back to my old life. No, you learn a new way of thinking, which leads to healthier results all round.
and I started working on my like mental health in general, I think in my very late teens, early 20s, right after A levels, essentially, I started kind of like diving into working on my mental health. And those years, while I was like focusing on just like surviving every single day and working on my mental health, a lot of my friends were, I don't know, traveling around the world. They were,
Yeah.
doing all these like big adventures in life, and they were doing these exciting things in college, and all those sorts of things. And now I would say, and then in our late 20s, kind of like 27-ish onwards. And I remember like we had a conversation collectively as friends about this because we were doing this like, kind of like a little game, a thought bubble game kind of thing of like, hey, so let's kind of like think about who has changed the most since A levels till now kind of thing, right? And so and my friends were like essentially the consensus in the end was that they felt like I had changed the most because I used to be this like hyperactive, just like wacky kind of wild guy. And there were parts of it that I still retain because I'm a little bit of a crazy person, but I've become like far more grounded and very calm in myself as a person.
Yeah.
Um, and also like they noted, they were like, you worked on your mental health
Yeah.
way before any of us did. And now
Exactly.
in our late 20s, we're having to deal with, like issues in life and now building the tools
That's
of like, okay, how do I deal with my emotions? How do I,
super important.
process life events and
Critical.
all and building self-awareness. And I was
Right.
like, and that kind of like really hit me because I was like, okay, sometimes it can be the flip way. Now they see me at times, they see me as, okay, he's doing his adventures or whatever it is. And now they're working on more of the emotional mental work of, adult things in life.
Yeah, that's so important, Moment. It truly is. And I think it comes down to mental stability, doesn't it? Right? When
Yeah.
you're stuck with OCD, not just OCD, but if you haven't really worked on mental health, people's reactions are quite erratic when you think about it, right? It's very unstable at times. It's like
Yeah.
going up and down and up and down. Whereas when you recover, the emotional regulation, you're not going from one high to the pits of depression, are you? You're better at just regulating the emotions, and that's what's key. And I want to end this real talk, Momin, we're not robots, right? You please forget this idea that you become emotionless. You don't.
Yeah.
If anything, I am more invested in life than emotionally than I ever have been in my life, ever. Right? I'm more absorbed by things going on in my life, my work, my relationships, my passions, my interests, everything in between than ever have been. So I am emotionally connected to that, right? I'm not just, having a great time and just sat there like a robot with no emotion, straight face. That's just not true. Okay. And you're gonna have healthy negative feelings and also healthy positive feelings. But you don't cross that line to unhealthy negative feelings, where it's the constant guilt and shame and
Yeah.
depression, which is what you've lived for, well, but certainly I lived for many years. So I want to clarify that because people often think you just become a robot,
Yeah.
and that is just not true at all. You're the opposite.
No, I mean, exactly. I think I feel, in fact, I was emotionally resigned from life. I just didn't have,
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
became a very disinterested person. Even
Yeah.
exciting things in life, it was like, okay, sure, but big deal. Like that would be my
Yeah.
reaction. And now it's like, oh, today I'm going to have chocolate ice cream after dinner, and I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Like those are the things that
Yeah.
can
I just
bring
didn't care.
uplift my mood.
I didn't care, Mohammed.
Yeah,
I genuinely didn't care. I was in that self-neglecting cycle, but also life neglect, other neglect. I
yeah,
Many times, people be telling me something that's rather significant to their lives, and I just wouldn't react. Right? There wasn't like a
same.
rude sense. It was just I didn't care because I was caught up in my symptoms. I was caught up in this thing in the past 5 years ago. I was so swarmed and I was drowning by my own emotions. So When you come
Yeah.
out the other end, you're connected to that. You're listening to what they're saying, right? You're not in the self-neglect and self-punishing cycle. You're in the
Yeah.
self-care, self-acceptance cycle. You're doing what's best for you, right? You're accepting
Yeah.
life all around you and doing what you can about it, rather than just sort of lack of life interest. You just, "Oh, I don't care about that." Just sort of apathetic approach was,
Yeah.
"Oh, you know, it doesn't bother me." Well,
You're very
actually, do
resigned.
the opposite
I
of
think
that. Resign.
you
Resigned is
become
the word,
very
yeah.
resigned from things. I think that's the best word to put it.
Yeah.
It was yeah, I just lost interest in just
Everything.
like everything. Yeah,
It,
essentially everything.
it,
Even the passions that I had in life, I lost interest in
yeah.
them.
Yeah, I stopped doing my passions. I stopped doing my hobbies.
Same.
What I do today, I'm completely rammed of hobbies, doing it all the time. Back then, it was
Yeah.
just literally just surviving. Right, I gave up
Yeah.
going to football. I gave up going to music. All the things that I love doing now outside of work, just gave it up because it was just getting through the day. That's a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, we could talk all
Um,
night. We could talk all night, couldn't
we
we?
can talk all night, and maybe we should. Hey guys, do you want to do a live stream? Join now, and we'll be talking for the up till sunrise. Anyway, but no, Sam. I mean, again, I'm glad we did this, and I'm glad we have now, I think, a few real talks as well. I hope this recording turns out fine because I don't know. Let's see. I'll probably chop it up and see
It'll
how
be
it
fine.
can.
If not, we'll have to adapt to it and adjust, won't we?
We'll have to redo this entire thing. Oh no, we've wasted our life. But no, we can redo this conversation. Um, at the very least, I can even extract the audio from this and we can like upload that as well. I
It'll
think
be
that would
fine.
be good.
It'll be fine.
It'll
If
be
not,
fine. We'll adapt.
we'll learn to accept it and move on.
Yeah.
With
All
a
right,
mild
Sam.
frustration, yes, it would be frustrating. We're human,
It
but we
would
move
be
on.
it
You can't go back
exactly.
and change it now.
You can't. But no, Sam, have a good rest of the weekend. Of course, we will dip in and out in touch with each other, and I'll see you around.
Yeah. Bye, moment.
All right, take
Bye,
care.
bye, guys.
Bye.